Good afternoon, everyone. Great pleasure to be here this afternoon sharing with you our thoughts on cybersecurity. Before I talk to you about what I'm going to say today, just give you a little bit of background about myself. Not because I'm terribly important, but it might help you understand where I'm coming from. So prior to joining Telstra, I worked for an agency called the Defence Signals Directorate, now known as the Australian Signals Directorate. If you don't know much about that agency, it is a member of the Australian intelligence community, and its role is to take foreign information for the production of intelligence for the Australian government. Its role is also to stop others taking Australian information for the production of intelligence for foreign governments. So it's both a poacher and gamekeeper. I've worked on both sides of that business, so where I come from is based on also being really good perhaps in an organisation that is good at taking information from people. In the last 6 years at the Defence Signals Directorate, I was the head of cyber and information security. And it was there that I got my interest peaked in the challenge of cybersecurity and what to do about it. And that's why I joined Telstra. And why Telstra? Because Telstra touches the lives of almost every Australian, whether it's directly through our small business enterprise, government customers, or indirectly through our wholesale customers. On any given moment, we're touching the lives of almost every Australian. And that requires us to pay attention to cybersecurity. So there's no doubt cybersecurity is an economic driver. Our economy is changing, we're challenged by growth headwinds, and actually disruptive business models. And when I say disruptive business models, I mean that in a positive sense, not something to be worried about or bad. But that's the environment in which we're in. And because of that, we know our economy needs to diversify to continue to grow. And connectivity and technology can enable new businesses and help our economy grow. But as we do that, that means technology and connectivity will continue to further underpin our economy and our society. And we'll take that technology and connectivity for granted. Think of a device on your wrist that's sending health data to your doctor. Think of your fridge ordering your food for you. Think of a toilet sending health data to your doctor. As funny as that might sound, there's some great research going on at the moment in Australia, sensors that are able to do that. Think of the potential and the positive benefit for people in high-risk health categories. There's no doubt in this connected world that connectivity and technology has actually already had great benefit to society and the economy. But I'm a big believer in that we're only just starting to scratch that surface, and the full potential of that is yet to be realised. And as we have connectivity and technology, we're going to need cybersecurity. My point there is, though, it's not about cybersecurity, it's about helping the economy diversify, using technology and connectivity, and underpinning that, of course, cybersecurity is one element that needs to help our economy diversify. As we do that, of course, we've got to understand this risk. Because if we don't understand this risk, our economy will not be able to diversify and will struggle to grow as a consequence of the benefits that this technology and connectivity provides. So I've got 3 guiding thoughts or rules that I want to leave with you today. The first, cybersecurity is a business risk. So people might actually understand that this risk is significant. You read about it in the media every day. But actually most people, unfortunately, still get up in the complexities of this subject and are paralysed. They don't know where to go or what to do. That needs to be addressed. The other important thing to remember, cybercrime, we love to put the cyber word in front of everything. Cybercrime is just crime. Cyber espionage is just espionage. Hacktivism is just protest. There's nothing new in any of that. It's important to remember that. What is new, however, or what is different, it's technology and connectivity now means today that crime, espionage, protest, and let's face it, and let us not forget mistakes, can now happen at a pace, scale and reach which is unprecedented. And that's why the cyber threat is a challenge, and that's why cybersecurity is a matter of not domestic but global importance. And this threat actually is here to stay, so we just have to accept that and get used to it. As long as criminals are making money out of stealing data, disrupting systems and extortion, they're going to continue to do that because they're making money. To change the talk a little bit, how many of you have actually rushed out of the house in the morning and left your keys on the kitchen bench and locked yourselves out of the house? Come on, be honest. I'd expect most people to actually have that experience. I know I certainly have. But interestingly, and I won't ask you to answer this question, how many of you have actually managed to get back into your house despite locking yourself out? Whether it be through a door that was meant to be locked and you've got through and you've defeated your security, whether it's you've lifted the roof tiles off and climbed through the manhole cover. I've done that. The point is people can get in, and in cybersecurity you've got to remember that as well. No matter what efforts you do to protect yourself, you've also got to be prepared, because actually someone will get to your data or into your systems. And I don't say that in a defeatist way, it's just a reality you have to be prepared for. Steve mentioned it. It's an important point. It's not just what you do to prevent, it's what you do to detect and respond and recover that's equally important. So this is a business risk. It is the business that's impacted, and it's your customers that are impacted if something goes wrong. And if it goes terribly wrong, there are significant financial damages and potentially damage to the economy. Absolutely important you remember that this is a business risk first and foremost. Steve had a slide of some of the large data breaches. In 2015, the top 13 resulted in 197 million customer records that were lost. That's 197 million records in the wrong hands. This crime, this espionage, this protest, whatever that was, can happen at a pace, scale and reach which is unprecedented. So in Telstra, we take a very collaborative approach to this. Every business unit and every business unit needs to understand this is a business risk and how that risk manifests for their business unit. It's not my responsibility solely, it's not the CIO's responsibility. Every business has that responsibility. It is not an IT problem. It's not something that rests with the IT department. Our staff also need to understand the significance of this risk and the role that they play. Because let's face it, as much as we talk about sophisticated hacking, it's one of those things that bugs me about some of the reporting that you see from the media and the industry and the commentaries about sophisticated, advanced, persistent threat. Most of that, they were successful because some human being or well-meaning staff member clicked on a link or opened an email that they probably shouldn't have, and the badness happens from there. The human firewall is really important. We should not forget that. The human element of this is really important. We should not forget that. I have a dedicated team in Telstra. Their sole role is to influence our staff so they understand in their heads and their hearts what they can do about this risk. And we constantly engage with our team across Telstra to look for opportunities to improve that level of understanding. Second, it's important to understand this threat cannot be eliminated, but the risk can be managed. And Telstra's 5 No's of cybersecurity is actually, we think, a pretty good place to start. For me, it's a significant shift in focus. The conversation is no longer about technology. It's a conversation that senior leaders, the CEO, the chair of the risk audit committee, the chair of the company can engage in. And when you get that engagement, you get positive change in your organisation. You start to be able to understand the risks that you're taking. The 5 No's are on the screen. I will walk through them quickly because it's important. Know the value of your data. So that's not just the value to you, your company, but the value of your data you have that's valuable to your customer, your competitors. Most businesses know that. But also think about or talk to someone who can help you understand the value of the data you have to criminals. Because once you know the value of that data, you've got to know who has access to the data. Does everyone in your business need to have access to valuable data? Does everyone in your supply chain need to have potential access? Then you've got to know where your data is. In this cloud-enabled and connected world, you might be surprised sometimes where your data ends up. Nothing wrong with where you find that surprise, but you've got to know where it is, because then you've got to know who's protecting it. If someone was trying to take that data or encrypt it to hold you to ransom, would you know that? And finally, you've got to know how well it's protected. That's when you can bring the techies in. Well, first four are really a conversation that CEOs should be asking their companies and leadership teams should be discussing and business units should be discussing. And in Telstra, we've walked that talk. We've just completed a complete business unit by business unit review of the 5 No's. It's been an engaging exercise, and that's the positive thing, because now those business units can reconsider their business risk assessments for cybersecurity based on knowing those 5 things. The other thing that CEOs should be asking their leadership team, the 3 questions or 3 assurances, that's my role in the company, actually helping our leadership team and our risk audit committee understand, have we identified the right risks for our customers and our company? So have we identified those correctly? The second one is, are we managing those risks effectively? And if you do 1 and 2, number 3 is also important. When something bad happens, do you have a response plan in place? Do you have the capability in place or access to the capability, because your company might not be large enough, and is it exercised so you know how to respond effectively? And if you need help in doing that, the world has given you many examples that you can look at. Every time we see a major security breach in Telstra, we review it, of some other company, we review it and consider, could that happen to us? And if it did, what would we do about it? You don't need to make these scenarios up these days, they're there for everyone. It's also important, though, in this connected world, not to fall into the trap of believing that compliance with a security standard is good security, or that your business is immune because you're compliant to some, pick your favourite standard. Compliance does not and never will equal good security. I've seen some of the most compliant organisations on this planet still very vulnerable to hacks. Neither does spending more money on security equal good security. CEOs should expect a mixture of technical controls, staff understanding and cultural aspects to help an organisation managing this risk. Final one, and this is near and dear to my heart, cybersecurity requires strong leadership. I've seen this happen in my career, and I've also seen it where there isn't strong leadership, and I've learnt from both. It's easy to make the claim, though, that cybersecurity requires strong leadership, so let me give you an example. Firstly, I'll acknowledge Dr. Ian Watt, who was going to be here today, former Secretary in the Federal Department. He is a board member of CEDA. So when Dr. Watt was the Secretary of the Department of Defence, I recall briefing him for the first time in his job about a matter on cybersecurity in the Cybersecurity Operations Centre. At the end of the briefing, he said thank you, which is great, but he also said another thing which I thought was important. Mike, I understand this is a significant issue, and I'm confident and I have no doubt that we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. He delivered on that commitment. Now, just saying that he understood the issue, and I actually believe he did, the next thing which he did, which is far more important, he actually did something about it. So as a CEO of a government department, he took it upon himself to help share this message with his portfolio peers. And he arranged for me and our Deputy Secretary to brief the Portfolio Secretaries Committee on what you could do about the threat and why it was so bad. That's an example of a CEO influencing his peers across industry or in a government space. When he became the Secretary of Prime Minister and Cabinet, ASD's, Australian Signals Directorate's top 4 strategies to mitigate targeted cyber attacks became mandatory for federal government agencies. And I can tell you that mandate made a significant difference to the security posture of the federal government. That's leadership in action. He not only understood the risk and worked to understand the risk, he then took action as a leader and led by example that influenced his peers, and then put in place a requirement that everyone had to follow that lifted the security of data held by federal government agencies. Other point I'd like to make is, you've got to remind yourself that successful companies already know how to manage significant risks. That is in part why they're successful. So don't forget that DNA and what makes that possible. Apply it to the problem of cyber. Because once you're actively engaged and you understand the risk, just apply that same DNA if you're a successful company, and you'll continue to manage this risk significantly. At Telstra, our board and our CEO and his leadership team are actively engaged in this subject. Our CEO himself actually last year met and held some roundtables with peers in industry. And that was simply to have him get his understanding further developed and share with his peers the way he approached it, so his thinking could evolve and their thinking could also evolve. For the techies in the room, if there are any, your engagement, or security professionals in the room, your engagement with your senior leadership team, you've got to start talking in accessible language. I've seen many examples where the eyes glaze over when the well-meaning, highly capable techie can start talking in a language that loses your senior. It's a business risk. Talk about it in business terms. What you're doing about it, really important to do that. So in conclusion, there's no doubt in my mind that cybersecurity is an economic driver. And it's important to remember, not just because there's a cost to business, there is opportunity for businesses. If you manage this risk well, your business will succeed, if not grow. The Australian economy is changing and is challenged, as we know, by slower growth and disruptive business models. But in order to grow, we can diversify our economy, and we can do that through the use of technology and connectivity. And if we do that with security in mind, great things can happen. So remember, you can understand, you can manage this risk if you do these three things. You've got to treat this as a business risk first and foremost. You've got to understand this threat cannot be eliminated, but the risk can be effectively managed. And if you apply strong leadership, you will be able to manage this risk effectively. And if we all do that, actually Australia is going to be a safer place to invest in. Thank you.